Konferencji prasowej z udziałem kandydata na prezydenta Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej, pana Grzegorza Brauna. Jest z nami również pan poseł Roman Fritz, poseł Ziemi Śląskiej, pan Wojciech Siński, komitet polityczny naszej partii, ale również Ziemia Śląska. Jest również pan Krzysztof Figura, pełnomocnik wyborczy komitetu pana Grzegorza Brauna, a znajdujemy się w Katowicach przed kopalnią Wujek, kopalnią węgla kamiennego. Przed południem w Ministerstwie Przemysłu nasi posłowie przeprowadzili interwencję poselską, która dotyczyła...
Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has accused Western nations of deliberately obstructing his visit to Moscow for Russia's Victory Day celebrations after Estonia denied access to its airspace. Fico revealed that Estonia's decision came despite Slovakia having annual clearance to use its skies for official government travel, calling the move an intentional effort to delay his participation in the May 9th commemoration.
All of us, frankly, on both sides of the Atlantic have gotten a little bit too comfortable with the security posture of the last 20 years, and that, frankly, that security posture is not adequate to meet the challenges of the next 20 years. So there are a lot of ways in which this alliance will evolve and change, in the same way that the alliance evolved and changed from 1945 to 1975 and from 1975 to 2005. I do think that we're in one of these phases where we're going to have to rethink a lot of big questions.
Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio slamming Germany's government for allowing its spy agency to monitor and label the conservative oppositional party, AfD, as extremists, a move Rubio called tyranny in disguise.
Now, the Russians are asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions in order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much. Okay. The final point that I'd make is not to rehash what's in that document, but one of the things that I said in that speech that didn't get as much airplay, but I thought was just as important, is that everything that I said there applied as much to the previous American administration as it did any government in Europe. Oh. And I think that I mean this from the heart and as a friend, that there is a trade-off between policing the bounds of democratic speech and debate and losing the trust of our people. Every single country, and we're all going to draw the lines a little bit differently, every single country says there are things that are outside the realm of political debate. I understand that, I accept that, and I'm fine if one country is going to draw those lines a little bit differently than the United States. But I think all of us, including especially the United States, we have to be careful that we don't draw the lines in such a way that we actually undermine the very democratic legitimacy upon which all of our civilization rests. And I think that is fundamentally the point here.
It's May 8th. We have real big developments happening with J.D. Vance announcing the global order change that's taking place right now. With the old NATO global order is now changing, and Europeans want US to keep on the pressure on Russia, while J.D. Vance said in this interview during the Munich conference that the world order is changing. What does this mean? It means that the priorities for the United States are changing, and J.D. Vance basically said the main threat to US right now is China. So this goes to say why US is willing, I guess, to not participate in Ukraine ceasefire talks anymore, because like Marco Rubio has mentioned many times, it's not a priority for US because Russia is not their biggest threat. Their biggest threat to US is China. And also during this same interview during the Munich conference, J.D. Vance talks about the increasingly undemocratic Europe and undemocratic US tendencies that are happening, which he talked about during his first Munich conference. Now he's emphasizing that again, that one of the main threats to Europe and US and to the world is the increasing tyrannical rule that's happening in Europe and US, obviously through the neoliberal globalist powers. And Marco Rubio goes on to mention the German tyrannical abuse of power. In Germany, the Germans just designated the Conservative Party as a far-right extremist party. So, and Marco Rubio called this tyranny in disguise. Can you imagine the US Secretary of State is calling the Germans and their actions tyranny in disguise? He's not calling Putin and the Russians tyranny in disguise. He's calling the Germans tyranny in disguise. The Germans that want to go to war against Russia with the help of US right now. I don't think that's gonna happen. And increasingly belligerent Zelensky is making videos, walking around, parading his war efforts. He's just talking on a video last night how the EU and the West will help Ukraine build more military factories if Russia allows that to happen. How basically Ukraine will be joining European Union, which Ursula von der Leyen just said the other day that Ukraine should be joining EU, and that's basically a step to joining NATO, and that's the reason this whole war started to begin with. And J.D. Vance mentions that Russia wants too much. Maybe it's all of Ukraine that he means Russia wants too much. But we have drones flying to Russia. Russia reporting over 500 drones that flew into the capital and the regions around it. They shot down over 500 drones. Maybe this is the peace that Zelensky's talking about and the ceasefire that he's talking about. Or possibly this could be a step to test the anti-missile systems in Russia. And we have the parade in Red Square tomorrow, so I think this is all going to be a test for the Russian missile systems that Zelensky and the Ukrainian side is doing, so they know where and how they can send their drones and missiles so they can better penetrate the airspace. And we have, last but not least in the news, we have the rebellion that's increasingly getting hotter in EU as Europe is disintegrating due to its tyrannical tendencies. We're seeing Slovakia's president rebel against Ursula von der Leyen's obedience demands, and basically Slovakia is not obeying Ursula von der Leyen's demands not to attend Russia and the Red Square parade. We're seeing Serbia's president being a little rebellious child as well, and now listening to Ursula von der Leyen, and he attends Red Square and actually made a speech from Red Square. How dare you? And we have many other leaders, including a Chinese president that's attending Red Square Parade tomorrow. And this is all happening, and in the background we have Europe committing suicide with Ursula von der Leyen going green, and she's making plans to cut all Russian energy from EU by year 2027. And Hungary and Orban and Hungary's foreign minister basically said we're not going to comply with Ursula von der Leyen's demands, because it's basically an economic suicide. So the women in pants in Europe, I guess I could say the main woman that wears pants in Europe, Ursula von der Leyen, Chancellor, possibly a granddaughter of a Nazi, she is leading the suicide of Europe, and it's happening all in front of our eyes. While in Poland we're seeing the Polish candidate burning the EU flag, we're seeing United States increasingly telling Europe that you need to go fight your own war and increase your own defense spending, because our priority is not fighting Russia anymore. Our priority is fighting neo-globalists, tyrannical rule in US, Europe, and also China. And China is a problem not only economically but also systematically, because China represents a perfect globalist system that would be installed when the globalists install their one world government. They could use a Chinese style system. That's why China is such a threat, not only economically for the US and Europe, and for the democratic forces of real democratic forces that have been hijacked by the neoliberals, by the globalists in Europe and America. China represents that threat for the real democratic forces. And that's what J.D. Vance basically is saying, that our priorities have changed and Europe needs to go on its own if they choose to fight a longer war. And we're seeing Zelensky going fully pedal to the metal as far as the Russian war goes. Propaganda machine full throttle. He claims he wants ceasefire, but he's sending more drones. I guess that's part of the ceasefire. He doesn't want a 3-day ceasefire. He says he wants a 30-day at least ceasefire. If not, then he's not gonna comply with any ceasefires. One should ask, a ceasefire is a ceasefire. If you really wanted peace, you would have a ceasefire. He doesn't want peace. They need to fight because their globalist elites and their globalist owners are telling him that you need to keep on going. It doesn't matter what happens to Ukraine. That's what we have for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.